Hey everyone, welcome back to Eat Your Feelings. Today I'm making a beautiful soup. Now, it's the time of year for soups and stews, right? So I'm going to be making quite a few, but today's soup I learned how to make years ago in a cooking class back in Colorado. I think the year was like 2003. And this soup just instantly grew on me. I make it all the time. So what I love about this soup is that it's rich, but it's so light at the same time, and it's really healthy. So here's what we're doing to get started. I just poured in some organic chicken broth. Now this is free range organic, but it is not low sodium. So if you're on a low sodium diet, go ahead and use low sodium. It definitely works either way. So I poured that in. I've got some pulverized onion here that I'm going to cook. Let's see. I didn't add any water. I'm just going to add a tiny bit and cover it up. A lot of times the water will cook out of the vegetable, so I try not to add too much water to the food, to cooking. No oils, anything like that, just the onion. There we go. So this is a lemon chicken soup, and it's Greek in origin. And so I have about a pound of cubed chicken that I already cooked that's gonna go in, and a little bit of rice, about a cup of cooked rice. This is so simple, guys. And then the onion, and then the key fun ingredient is some egg. I beat 3 eggs, and I'm letting it sit out so that it gets a little bit closer to room temperature. We don't want cold eggs hitting a hot pan because the eggs are going to cook and curdle. We're really using the egg for a little extra protein and to make it a creamy soup without using any dairy. It's fantastic. The final ingredient is, well, I use some fresh thyme as well, but is lemon juice. So it's a 1/4 cup of fresh squeezed lemon. This is so refreshing. You're going to love it. So I'm going to go ahead and put the thyme in now. Smells amazing. Here we go. Let's throw it all in. We're good. So while this is cooking up, I'm going to throw in the chicken. Let it warm up. It was a little cold from sitting in the fridge for a couple hours. I've been cooking all afternoon, you guys. It's so fun, especially on a cool, rainy fall day. Okay, so we're going to put the rice in too. I love making the soup when I have some lemons that are kind of turning, and I'm like, uh-oh, what am I going to do with these lemons? I will make the soup, and everyone in my household loves it. So I'm going to put a little bit of salt and pepper in here too. While this is cooking up, I was thinking today, I was having a chat with someone who was a little bit down the other day. I thought about how sometimes we just have such a propensity toward negative thinking. And I think it really is something that we learn early on. And we probably learn it from our parents, if we're, honest, or people that we grew up with, family members, teachers, who knows. But once we get into that negative thinking, it's really, really hard to get out of it, in my opinion. And, every day we wake up and we have the opportunity to see the world as an amazing place, or to see people as wonderful or amazing, or to pick out the flaw in everything. And I know I have struggled with that from time to time, right? Because what do we know about perfectionists? Perfectionists walk into a room and they immediately see the flaw. Now that can be seemingly awful on the surface, right? When you think about it, in certain situations, it's really good to be that detail oriented, to see the flaw, right? I'm a writer, and when I write books, I need that person who's going to find every typo And a lot of times people go, oh, I'm sorry to point this out. No, no, no. Point it out in my proof copy. Point it out during editing. I want to know all of the typos so we can correct them, right? However, at some point, we have to be willing to look beyond the flaw or accept the flaw or reframe our thinking. And maybe what we see as an imperfection is an opportunity or something wonderful, right? So I think this is really important if you struggle with negative thinking. And I think a lot of people, especially if we have like ADD, ADHD, or depression or anxiety, any sort of mental health concern, I think it's really easy to think negatively and to see the disadvantage in any situation versus the opportunity or thinking outside the box, right? Back in the day, they often called that learned helplessness. And I don't know, do you guys remember the experiment they did with the dog? And what happened was they put a dog in a cage and they shocked the cage. It was a metal cage, and they gave it an electric shock. And the dog freaked out and yelped and tried to get out, tried to escape. And then when he realized he couldn't escape, he just laid down and he accepted the fact that he was getting electrocuted, basically. And that was a, awful enough experiment in and of itself. But the worst part was when they finally opened the door of the cage, the dog didn't even try to save himself. He just laid there. He didn't get out of the cage, even though he was still being electrocuted. And they coined that learned helplessness. And I think about that with my clients. I think about that in my personal life, my professional life. Where do I feel powerless sometimes? Where do I kind of feel defeated, right? And I think, it becomes a mental disease, because if we've been traumatized in life or we've been chronically disappointed, then a lot of times we won't try to see the good in a situation, or we won't try to see our way out of the cage. We'll just feel defeated. And then that's when that victim mentality comes. And it's really tough once we're mired in that victim mentality. It's really tough to get out of it, isn't it? I'm going to check these onions real quick. Oh, they're looking good. Looking good. So drop a line, by the way, if you guys can relate to any of this, because I think, sometimes, and, it doesn't happen in every situation. We might be positive about certain situations, but then other situations that maybe trigger us about the past or from our childhoods, can easily leave us feeling powerless and helpless, just like that, right? So think about your own life and think about areas that you might feel powerless. Is it work? Is it with your family? Is it with your spouse? Is it, something to do with your home, your children, your parents, your spiritual life? I mean, anything, your health, your physical health. Thinking about areas that you feel disempowered or even disenchanted, I think is important to identify when we're trying to overcome negative thinking. And then, looking, I'm going to add a little more water to this, guys. Looking for ways to turn it around and to reframe it. I remember a story a long time ago somebody told me. I'm going to turn these down to low, by the way. They were cooking on 4, where this husband was complaining about his wife. And he was saying, oh, she's so picky. Nothing's good enough. And she's picky about this and she's picky about that. And I think they were in a group counseling setting, something along those lines. And the facilitator said, well, she's so choosy, yet she chose you. And the husband was like, oh, I never thought of it like that. Wow, she must think I'm pretty special. And, that's just a small example, but looking for opportunities to change it around. Now, years ago, I read a book by Byron Katie, and I think the name of the book was called Loving What Is. And her work, she calls the inquiry, right? Questioning your thoughts. Okay, you believe something. Is it true? How do you feel when you believe that thought? Do you feel depressed? Do you feel anxious? Do you feel helpless? Who would you be if you didn't have that thought. And then I think her fourth step is turn it around. What's the truth? And, I love that work because if we have a thought and it makes us feel bad, it's my opinion that it's an automatic lie. How can the truth make us feel horrible? I don't think it does. And so, looking at areas that we tell ourselves falsehoods. All right, pause, guys. These onions are done. They're going to go in the soup. Looking good. And I only cooked them in a very small amount of water. Okay. Stir these in. Guys, this is so easy. It doesn't take very long either. It doesn't have to cook for very long. Now I've got the soup on like 2.5. I'm going to keep it there. And the eggs are feeling still kind of cold. I'm going to pour the lemon juice in. Now I've experimented with different amounts of this lemon juice. And a 1/4 cup seems to be about perfect. If you put too much in, it just makes the whole soup too acidy. And then there's really no correcting it at that point. I guess you could maybe add more broth. And if you don't put enough in, then you don't really get the lemon flavor. All right. So back to our conversation. So thinking about areas of your life, so maybe it's a relationship with your parent or a relationship with your spouse, looking for ways that you can reframe it. And first off, it's so important to just write down the thought, write down the narrative that's going on in your head. Here's an example. Perhaps your husband never puts his clothes in the hamper. Maybe they end up on the floor next to the hamper. And you could focus on that and you can go, gosh, I've asked him a million times, put the clothes in the hamper, and he just doesn't do it. He must not love me. And that would be a real false narrative. And then when we believe that, we're going to act accordingly. So if we think he really doesn't care or that he never listens, then I might start nitpicking him, or I might start creating distance. Versus I could sit there and look at the truth and say, well, he always takes out the trash. He helps me cook dinner. He's really kind about A, B, and C. Looking at all his positive traits versus focusing on the one thing. Now, maybe your husband has a bunch of things he doesn't do. Maybe he misses the hamper. Maybe he never takes out the trash. That's a different story. But I'm just saying, one isolated thing, if it really gets on your nerves, maybe stop and question and go, all right, am I letting this one thing sour my whole relationship with this person? Or, is it more about me? Is it, maybe I didn't feel heard as a child. Maybe, there was something else going on and he is triggering that wound. Just something to think about, right? All right. I am going to slowly start pouring this egg mixture in. So here's what I'm going to do. I think it's going to be less messy if I do it like this. And these are pasture-raised organic eggs. And you can always tell because the egg yolks are darker and they're just beautiful. All right, so this is really tricky, guys. This is the toughest part of this soup, is getting the egg not to curdle. And I'm not convinced I can do it either, so we'll see. Some days it works, some days it doesn't. Just a little at a time. So far, so good. I think the key is you have to let the eggs sit out for just a little bit. If they're super cold, when the soup is too hot, it basically turns into scrambled eggs inside your soup. We're doing good so far. This is delicious. Even picky eaters will like this soup. I live in the Midwest, and if it doesn't have cream of mushroom soup in it, people don't always love it. So I think they're always a little surprised by my cooking. This is good. And this is definitely allowed on my detox plan. If you're in the mood, if you're ready for a detox, click the link. All right, here we go. If your cholesterol's up, if your blood pressure's up, if your blood sugar's up, if you're wanting to lose a few pounds, here we go. Almost done. This is looking beautiful. There we go. I don't know about you guys, but I think food is just so pretty. I love the colors. I love the textures. All right, guys, we did it. We did it. No curdling. Success. Now, if it did curdle a little bit, no worries. It still tastes amazing. It doesn't affect the flavor whatsoever. Okay. All right, I'm going to turn this up just a tad. I'm going to turn it up to just shy of a 4. Get just a slow boil on it. Yeah. And I'm going to give you guys a little homework assignment. Get a piece of paper or get your journal out and list out every area of your life where you feel powerless. I promise you, it's a very eye-opening experience. And when you list out all of those areas, leave some space to go, okay, what's my false narrative about this area of my life? And how do I flip that around? What's the truth in the situation? What is the truth? If you really want to dive into this, I'll put a link below. My book, Uncaged, goes through all of these exercises to really help you figure out where you're stuck in life and how you can become empowered. It's a real deep dive into you if you're ready. I think we're ready to serve this soup. Now, this is probably going to serve about 4 people. You might have a little bit left over. Just going to make a little bowl. I always love to garnish with some fresh thyme. Why not make it pretty, right? There we go. All right, let's give it a try. Delicious. If you love this recipe, click below, subscribe to my channel. As always, guys, hug yourself from me, and we'll see you next time.